Hi everybody, it's Cash. Welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. Today I want to do something really, really fascinating. The transition pictures for psychic Sylvia Browne. What makes it fascinating is that I've done them before, about 4 years ago. Since then, a few people have written to me saying, but I met her. I had readings from her. I've read her books. She was not in life like your transition pictures say she was as she crossed over. How come? I have to defer to them because, quite honestly, I don't know that any of this is true. It's actually why I don't do private readings, by the way, because I can't guarantee that what I'm saying is true. I'm not a medium. I'm just telling you what the energy is like and the pictures that I get in my head. I've done private pictures for several people as a test, and certainly the feedback has been excellent, suggesting that the pictures may be right, because I don't know the people I'm doing. They're just strangers to me. But the feedback has been excellent, suggesting that it's good, but I don't know for sure. And I thought, well, of all the people that I've ever done who would probably be interested in having her pictures done again, it's Sylvia Browne. She would be fascinated, I have no doubt. And so I thought, I will do her pictures a second time. But I won't refer back to the original pictures 4 years ago. I have done so many sets of pictures by this point, so many transitions, so many general pictures, I can't remember them from 6 months ago, let alone 4 years. I had absolutely no recollection of what the pictures were for Sylvia Browne. But I thought, I'll do them again from scratch and then see if the new ones have any resemblance to the old ones. If they don't, that's a problem. That suggests I'm not doing it right. Now, I know the pictures are going to be different because it doesn't matter how many times I do pictures for somebody, their pictures are always different, but generally they reflect the same emotions and the same trajectory, and so on. So I would expect them to be parallel for Sylvia Browne, both times. But I don't know. And so I went into the energy of this picture and I waited to see what happened. She died in 2013 at the age of 77 of a heart attack, having accomplished a huge amount of stuff in her life. I think she wrote like 40 books. She started her own church and was on Larry King. That's how I knew about her. She was on Larry King constantly. She's very controversial because she made quite a few errors, but many people have written to me saying, I did have a reading with Sylvia Browne when she was alive, and she was astonishing. She changed my life. So I'm not going to get into that argument about whether she was real or not. I think it's too easy to attack people after they're gone and try to drag them down. She accomplished a lot in her life. She was earning about $3 million a year at one point, and that's a success. And so I thought, this woman, she had a great life. She wasn't always right in her predictions or her statements, but she had a great life. And then finally, she died at the age of 77 in 2013. So I went into the energy of that picture. And when I did, there was a skylight initially, and she came hurtling through it. Heart attack, sudden, I assume, and she went and hit notionally, metaphorically, the ground. One of the things that has happened since I did those early pictures is that I can now do more. My abilities have expanded slightly, and I can take in more of the scope, more of the circumstances than I could initially. So I see them entering that period of crossover. And she came in through the skylight and hit this metaphorical ground. Dazed, actually. For all her worldly experience and all her explorations and investigations and so on, she was still dazed by the actual event when it happened. And I got blurred vision, actually. I could see the tunnel, and I could see that metaphorical cave that I always see at the end where people seem to go each time. but it was very blurred. And I got a sense that she didn't necessarily want to see what this was, which, again, I think goes against what she said in life, actually. But she didn't seem to either want to see it or to accept it as it was. It's like, really? It's like cognitive dissonance. What is this? This is nothing like what I expected. It was blurred. She crawled forward into that cave, and I felt not only like this was it, this was over, now we're going to find out what it's really like, but also extremely upset. I couldn't get her off the ground. She lay in this symbolic cave thing, crying like a baby that's not been fed. Rolling backwards and forwards, kicking her legs, crying. Regret? Anger? Unreleased emotion from a lifetime was finally coming out. But it poured out. And it was like a balloon deflating. It was like all the ego stuff went away. Fears, worries, anxieties, all the stuff about reputation and the things she'd been able to do and everything, all gradually went away, and she was just reduced. She was just like a little baby crying. Once she was all cried out, she started to feel that pull that most people feel. It's like a magnetic pull saying, come on, you can't just lie there, you've got to move forward. At which point she saw the other tunnel, the one that everybody goes up to reach the light, where they ascend. This one had chains in it, a bit like Marley's ghost chains, running all the way to the top, pulled by some force she couldn't make out. There was a mass of emotions here that it felt like she was shedding or facing up to for the first time ever. Getting up this tunnel was really hard. These chains were going by her. They weren't pulling her. She was just witnessing them go by. That happened, and that happened, and that. Oh my God, no. She was just witnessing them go by. Oh, yeah, that happened, and oh, yeah, I said that. Oh, no, yeah, I remember that. Oh. Heavy chains, like you see on a ship when it drops anchor. You know those chains, those big, thick chains? It's like that. 3, 4 of them. And every single one represented experience that she may have regretted or things she'd said or whatever. And she walked up between them up to the top of the tunnel. And by the time she got there, the rest of her baggage had been released. It was a 2-part thing. She released the first part, the really solid ego part in the cave at the bottom. And then coming up the tunnel, she released the emotional part, the regret part, and so on. And by the time she got to the top, she was a husk, and I couldn't get her to move. She just stood there lifeless, lacking in any kind of desire to move forward. I think there was fear here. And in the pictures, she began crying again. More release. There was so much in this woman to let go of. I'm sure she was a powerhouse in her way. I didn't really follow her career, but I'm sure she was a powerhouse in her way. And there was a fear of not having the control she'd had in life. Like, from here on in, even though she was robbed of all her ego stuff, she couldn't set the pace. She had no idea where she was going, although in life she'd had an idea. In fact, she was convinced she knew where she was going. But this was different. This wasn't the same. And now she was at the top of the tunnel, and she'd shed all this stuff. she had a certain amount of fear. It's as if her faith wasn't strong enough. She had faith, but it wasn't the right kind of faith. It was faith with a big F, maybe, religious faith, but not necessarily faith with a small f in the process. And she wept, and she was reluctant, and I couldn't get her to move. In the end, because you have to move, you have to advance, and you have to ascend. In the end, I felt that the dome of light I always see did the heavy lifting. It kind of expanded to embrace her, came around her. I've seen that happen before with people who had trepidation. It came around her and pulled her in, enveloped her, gave her love, embraced her with unconditional acceptance, not judgment or obviously ridicule or shame or anything like that. It's like, come on in. It's all gonna be okay. Wipe away your tears. You're gonna be fine. And I guess she was fine. I can't take anybody further than that. But it felt like she received solace and comfort and assurance. And it was enough to clear out her fears, clear out any misconceptions she had or confusion about this process. She'd built a life and a career out of understanding this process. And when she got here, there were elements of it that certainly didn't sync up with what she had believed in life. That's what I felt. Hence the fear and the sense of lack of control. It's like, oh, I thought there would be a certain set of steps I went through. I think she had a sense of what was beyond the light. I mean, I don't, because I'm not a medium, but I think she had a sense of what it is. And she may have been right, for all I know. But the Sylvia Browne mortal self, the self of form, had to be depleted and had to release her control over the process and her knowledge of what she thought it was going to be. And she had to accept what it actually was, which may have coincided with her beliefs or not. I have no idea. But the universe, as always, was forgiving and embracing. And grace met her halfway and said, come on, in, and enveloped her. Then she went. Once I'd done these pictures, I went and watched that original video. As I said, completely different pictures, really. And yet, not absolutely different. I mean, there were elements of it which achieve the same end, I think, just in a different pictorial form. But it's surprising. I was going to say shocking. It's actually surprising anyway, how close they are in terms of the thrust of them and the scope of them and the actual dynamics of this process. And it gave me a lot more faith that what I'm doing may actually be accurate. This may be what we go through in our crossovers and transitions. Absolutely fascinating. I'll put a link to that earlier video in the show notes below this video, the description. Please forgive the awful drawings in that video. I've come on a way since then, but they certainly convey the meaning anyway and achieve the same end. All right. But yeah, universal love is unconditional, all embracing, all forgiving, and great punctuation for a life well lived. That's what I learned from Sylvia Browne. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.